Hello and welcome everyone to a new series on Python Intermediate. This is the first tutorial in the series, and for you to understand the tutorials in this series, you must have the basic knowledge of Python. So for loops, if else, objects and classes and all that stuff. If you don't know the basics, I will leave a link in the description box below for the basics tutorial. Anyways, in this tutorial we are going to look at class methods and static methods. So let's first look at class methods. And as we are going to look at class methods, we first need a class. So let's say class person. We already looked at classes, objects and Dunder init function in the basics tutorial. So if you don't know about classes and objects, I advise you to watch those tutorials first. As I said, I will put the links in the description below. So now we have a class person, and inside this class, let's say the salary for everyone is 100. So salary equals 100. And salary is a class variable. Now let's create our Dunder init function. So if you remember, the Dunder init method is a special method that gets called whenever you create an object from the class. And the first parameter that this function takes is self. So self, and let's take another parameter, so name, and let's create an instance variable, so self.name equals name. So just to remind you guys, this self parameter is passed automatically by Python when you create an object, and this self parameter allows us to create instance variables. And now let's create a function to display the name and the salary. So let's say display, and let's print the name and the salary. And self.salary. So before we look at class methods, let's create an object. So let's say j equals person, and let's pass the name as Jerry, and let's create another object. Let's say t equals person and the name will be Tom. And let's also call the display method, so j.display and t.display, and let's run the code. And sure enough, it prints the name and the salary for both the objects. But now let's say we want to change the salary of Jerry to 500, and to do that we can use the object of Jerry, which is j, and the variable, so salary, and let's say we change it to 500, and let's run this. And now you can see the salary of Jerry is 500. Now let's say you want to change the salary for all the objects of the person class. So we can use objects to change the salary. We only have 2 objects, so it is not much of a problem. But let's say you have a lot of objects, and then it will be a lot of code. So in this case, you can use a class method. So let's create a class method. So let's say def and salary. The first parameter in the class method is not self, it is class. So we use CLS because we cannot use class as it is a keyword. Therefore we use CLS to represent class. So this is the first method in the class variable. Now let's say we take input as S, which is short for salary. And then we'll use CLS dot salary, and we'll set it equal to S. So that will be the salary we pass to the function. And to use a class method, before the function we use a decorator. So @ and then class method. So this is called as a decorator, and we haven't looked at decorators yet. But for now, just remember that decorators allow you to change the behavior of a class or a function. So now let's call our function salary, And as salary is a class method, we can use the class name to access that function. So person.salary, and let's say we want to change the salary to 500 for everyone. So 500, and let's run this. And now you can see the salary for Jerry is 500 and the salary for Tom is also 500. So the class method is able to change the salary for all the objects. The class method actually makes a change to the class itself, and therefore it is able to change the value for all the objects. So that is how you can use class methods. You first need the decorator, so add class method, and then instead of self you pass CLS, and after that you can have as many parameters as you want, similar to other functions. Now you can also call the class method with an object, and that will only change the value for that object, but it is not as useful as using the class to access the function. So that is the class method. It allows you to modify the values for the class itself. So now we will look at static methods, and to create a static method you need a decorator, so at the rate and then static method. So static methods do not need self or class as a parameter. They are similar to regular functions, but you just need to add the decorator. So let's create a function to check if it is an holiday. So def holiday. And as I said, for a static method we don't need self or class as a parameter, but we can have other parameters if we want. So let's say day. So for every person at least on earth, Sunday is a holiday. So we will check if the day is Sunday. So if day equals Sunday, and if the day is Sunday, we'll return true, else false. So this is a pretty simple function, but you might ask, why do we need a static function? So whenever you don't need the self or class parameter anywhere in the function, then you should probably use a static method. And you can see inside our function we don't need the self or the class parameter. We are just checking if the day is Sunday, and if it is a Sunday we are returning true, else false. So let's call our static method, and we can call the method with the class name. So person dot and holiday, and we'll pass the day as Sunday, and let's print, and let's run this, and sure enough it returns true because Sunday is a holiday. And you can also call the static method with an object. So let's say j.holiday, and let's run this, and you can see it still works. So that's going to be all for this tutorial. We looked at class methods and static methods. Class methods allow you to change something or do something that affects the class, and therefore it affects all the objects. And the first parameter of the class method is class, so CLS, and you also need to use the decorator. And now for the static methods, it doesn't take any special parameter, and you will mostly use static methods when you don't need to access self or class. I hope I was able to explain these concepts well enough. Anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you learned something, and see you guys until next time.